There's a $1,000 billion federal spending plan, an industrial onshoring wave, and a power grid that has to be rebuilt to handle AI data centers and electric vehicles. If you want to bet on America rebuilding America, one ticker, 101 companies, there's an ETF for that. It's called PAVE, and it's up over 48% in the last year. So what is PAVE? PAVE is the Global ex-US Infrastructure Development ETF. Same issuer as COPX and URNM. But instead of one commodity, PAVE owns the companies that actually build the infrastructure: electrical contractors, railroads, heavy equipment makers, construction and engineering firms, and industrial suppliers. It's the one-ticker way to ride federal infrastructure spending and the broader reshoring trend. Here's how it works. PAVE tracks the Index US Infrastructure Development Index. The index screens for companies involved in 4 buckets: construction and engineering, infrastructure raw materials and products, industrial transportation, and heavy equipment producers. It weights them by size, with a cap so no single name dominates. About 101 holdings total. The top 10 make up roughly a third of the fund, far more diversified than a typical thematic ETF. The top names read like a list of companies actually doing the work: Quanta Services, the electrical grid contractor; Eaton, the power management giant; CSX, one of the biggest U.S. railroads; Deere, the equipment maker; Train Technologies, HVAC. These aren't hype names. These are the companies turning federal dollars into poured concrete and new transmission lines. Quick stats. Expense ratio is 0.47%, cheaper than most thematic ETFs. AUM is about $12.5 billion, so there's real institutional interest. Distributions are semi-annual. Yield is small, around 0.8%. This is not an income fund, launched in March 2017. And over the last 12 months, PAVE has returned 48.84%, including dividends. That's been one of the strongest thematic performances on the board. How does it compare? There's no perfect peer. The closest is a sector ETF like XLI, the Industrial Select Sector Fund, but XLI has more consumer names and less pure infrastructure. There's also IYT for transports or ITA for aerospace and defense, but neither captures the full rebuilding story. Against COPX, same issuer. PAVE is the builder. COPX is the supplier of raw copper. Own both and you've got the supply chain covered. Who is PAVE for? If you think federal infrastructure spending keeps flowing, if you believe onshoring is real and multi-year, and if you want exposure to the power grid build-out for AI data centers and EV charging, PAVE is the cleanest single-fund way to own that thesis. It's also a way to own Deere and Eaton without picking which one wins. But know the risks. These are cyclical industrials. When recession fears spike or when the spending pipeline slows, PAVE will sell off with the broader industrial complex. It's not a defensive holding. Verdict. PAVE is the default infrastructure ETH for a reason. Broad, cheap enough, diversified, and riding a multi-year tailwind. If you believe America's physical economy matters again, PAVE is the way to own it in one ticker. Size it like any other thematic, 5 to 10% of a portfolio. Subscribe for more no-fluff ETF breakdowns. See you in the next one.